Steve Jobs, From Birth to Legacy. Steve Jobs was one of the most influential visionaries of the modern world. His life was a powerful story of creativity, ambition, failure, resilience, and ultimate victory. This is the story of Steve Jobs, from his birth, through his struggles and achievements, to the legacy he left behind. Early life and adoption. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California. His biological parents were two young university students who were not married at the time. Because they felt unprepared to raise a child, they decided to put him up for adoption. Steve was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, a working-class couple who lived in Mountain View, California. Paul Jobs was a machinist, and Clara Jobs worked as an accountant. They promised to give Steve a good education and a loving home. Growing up, Steve was curious, intelligent, and often rebellious. He did not enjoy traditional school rules and frequently challenged authority. However, he showed early signs of creativity and deep focus when something truly interested him. His father, Paul Jobs, played an important role in shaping Steve's mindset. He taught Steve how to work with tools, take things apart, and rebuild them carefully. Paul always emphasized craftsmanship, doing things well, even if no one else could see the inside. This lesson stayed with Steve Jobs for the rest of his life. Teenage years and early interests. As a teenager, Steve Jobs developed a strong interest in electronics. He spent time at Hewlett-Packard Laboratories, where he met engineers and learned how technology was built. During this time, he met Steve Wozniak, a shy but brilliant engineer who shared their love for electronics. The two became close friends despite having very different personalities. Jobs was bold, intense, and visionary. Wozniak was quiet, kind, and deeply technical. Together, they created a device called the Blue Box, which allowed users to make free long-distance phone calls. While illegal, this project taught Jobs an important lesson: small teams could create powerful technology. After graduating from high school, Steve Jobs enrolled at Reed College in Oregon. However, he dropped out after just 6 months. He felt the classes were not meaningful to him, and he did not want his parents to waste money on education he did not value. Even though he dropped out, Jobs continued attending classes he found interesting, including calligraphy. This decision would later influence the beautiful typography and design of Apple products. Spiritual journey and search for meaning. In his early 20s, Steve Jobs traveled to India in search of spiritual enlightenment. He studied Zen Buddhism and explored ideas about simplicity, focus, and inner clarity. This spiritual journey deeply influenced his personality and philosophy. Jobs believed that simplicity was the ultimate sophistication. He wanted to remove anything unnecessary and focus on only what truly mattered. These beliefs would later define Apple's design philosophy. The birth of Apple. In 1976, at just 21 years old, Steve Jobs co-founded Apple Computer with Steve Wozniak and Ronald Wayne. They started the company in Jobs' parents' garage. Wozniak built the technology, and Jobs focused on vision, marketing, and product direction. Their first product, the Apple I, was a simple computer sold as a circuit board. Soon after, they released the Apple II, one of the first successful personal computers. It was user-friendly, colorful, and accessible to ordinary people. The Apple II became a huge success and helped launch the personal computer revolution. In 1980, Apple went public. At just 25 years old, Steve Jobs became a multi-millionaire. However, success did not make him easy to work with. Leadership style and internal conflict. Steve Jobs was known for his intense personality. He demanded perfection, pushed employees to their limits, and often criticized harshly. Some people found him inspiring, while others found him difficult and intimidating. Jobs believed that great products came from pressure, focus, and high standards. He divided the world into great and not great and expected people to choose excellence. This leadership style helped create innovative products, but it also caused tension inside Apple. The Macintosh and the fall. In 1984, Apple released the Macintosh, a revolutionary computer with a graphical user interface and a mouse. It was introduced with one of the most famous advertisements in history. Although the Macintosh was innovative, it was expensive and had limited software. Sales were slower than expected. At the same time, Jobs' relationship with Apple's CEO, John Sculley, became strained. Internal power struggles grew worse, and in 1985, Apple's board removed Steve Jobs from his leadership role. At just 30 years old, the man who founded Apple was forced out of his own company. This was one of the most painful moments of his life. Failure, reflection, and new beginnings. After leaving Apple, Steve Jobs felt lost and deeply hurt. However, he later described this period as one of the most creative times of his life. He founded a new company called Next, focused on building advanced computers for education and business. While Next computers were not commercially successful, their software was highly advanced. During this time, Jobs also purchased a small animation studio called Pixar from George Lucas. Pixar struggled at first, but with time and perseverance, it released its first full-length animated film, Toy Story, in 1995. The movie was a massive success and changed the animation industry forever. Pixar became one of the most successful studios in the world, proving Jobs' ability to build great companies beyond Apple. Return to Apple and the Great Comeback. In 1997, Apple was near bankruptcy. Ironically, the company bought Next for its software technology, bringing Steve Jobs back to Apple. At first, he served as an advisor. Soon after, he became interim CEO. Jobs immediately made bold decisions. He cut unnecessary products, simplified the company's focus, and rebuilt Apple's culture around innovation and design. In 1998, Apple introduced the iMac, a colorful, simple, and user-friendly computer. It marked Apple's rebirth. This was only the beginning. The era of innovation. Under Steve Jobs' leadership, Apple introduced a series of revolutionary products. The iPod, which transformed the music industry. iTunes, which changed how people buy music. The iPhone, which redefined the smartphone. The iPad, which created a new category of devices. Jobs did not invent these technologies, but he perfected them. He combined hardware, software, and design into seamless experiences. Apple became one of the most valuable companies in the world. Steve Jobs had achieved victory, not just financially, but creatively.